If you didn't know, I'm a reader. I have been reading since I could remember. I love reading. I love books. This year I challenged myself. Not challenge, because I didn't want to put pressure on myself, but I just really wanted to read a lot more. Can my mum stop sneezing? I also downloaded Goodreads at the end of last year, and I found that has helped my reading a lot. I found that keeping a track of like how many books I've read and like how much of a book I have left to read sort of thing, like the percentage of how far I've gotten in a book has really helped me like stay motivated to keep reading. I don't think I've ever read this amount of books in a year. This is the pile. Oh my gosh. I'm really scared this is gonna fall. 2 more books missing from this pile because I have been borrowing a series from my friend Liv. She doesn't live in the same local government area as I am, and because it's lockdown I can't see her, so I can't get those books, but that's fine. I have found through reading a lot this year that I really love fiction. I love a bit of a mystery. I also found that I do occasionally enjoy, do not judge me please, even sometimes a bit of young teen fiction. Like they're kind of those books that you can just like read and not really have to like think about sort of thing, you know what I mean? But I think my main genre that I really love is young adult fiction and mystery. Yeah. By the way, if you don't like spoilers about books, don't watch this video. The first book I read this year was The Magpie Society by Zoe Sugg and Amy McCulloch. In 2012, I started watching Zoe's YouTube videos, but I never read like Girl Online or her other series before, anyway. But I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna give it a go. Basically, it's about a girl called Audrey, and she moves from America to England. She's sent to a boarding school. The boarding school is a bit funky. There's something going on in there that's a bit like, basically, at the start of the year before Audrey went to the school, one of the most popular girls was killed. So the police look into it, but they can't really find anything, so they kind of give up on the case and just say that it's and then a podcast comes out basically saying that they don't believe it was a and the police just didn't really want to get into it. It's about all those things happening, and it's about Audrey and her roommate Ivy and their friendship, and it's also about like boy issues, and it's also about like figuring out this case of this popular girl's death was about, and figuring out what the Magpie Society is, and it's a big thing. I did enjoy this book. I thought the storyline was really good. I really liked the idea of the plot. The writing was... I think Amy wrote Audrey and Zoe wrote Ivy, the roommate, and you can definitely tell that there's a difference in the writing between those two characters. I did find that Audrey was a lot easier to read, and I did find that the writing was a bit like flat. Whenever something like sad happened or whenever something really big happened in the book, I wasn't like whoa 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 sort of thing. I was kind of just like reading it like it was a normal day. Altogether, I thought it was a pretty decent book. It's nothing spectacular, but it's not bad, I would necessarily say. The second book I read was Secrets for the Mad by Dodie. I love Dodie. I love her music. I love her videos. I've been watching her videos and listening to her music since 2016 or 17. I was very excited to read this book. This book is actually my friend Holly's book. Shout out to you, Holly. Thank you for letting me borrow this. I really loved this book. I really loved how it's such like an insight into her brain and into her thoughts. I do know that she wrote it at a very like dark time period. But I really loved it. There are great stories, there's great advice, and yeah, I just really loved it. It was such a like sweet book. I really loved the drawings in it and how she put like pages with her lyrics in it with little drawings. It was so cute. It was really exciting to like get a glimpse into her thoughts, I suppose. The next book I read was Enola Holmes, The Case of the Missing Marquess by Nancy Springer. I, like a lot of people, watched the movie on Netflix and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very riveting, very like, oh my gosh. I saw the book in Kmart and I was like, oh my gosh, I should read it. It would be a really great book. The book is nothing like the movie. Let me tell you that. The movie has definitely brought the main ideas of the book. I found the book to be a lot more underwhelming and a lot more sort of mediocre and just like, okay. I also was really disappointed because the movie is so heavily surrounded and inspired by like the female revolution and like proving that females can show such a big difference, and there was like none of that in this book. But I did really like how it was written. I really enjoyed like the writing style of it. The next book I read was Genuine Fraud by E. Lockhart. Lockhart is very famous for writing the book We Were Liars. It's quite big on Bookstagram and BookTok, so I saw this and I was like, oh my gosh, I should pick it up. It is very hard to explain what it's about. I don't know how to explain it. I literally don't know how to explain this. The book goes backwards in time, which at first was really hard to understand and read. It starts at chapter 18 and then it goes down to chapter 1. I will say I really enjoyed it after figuring out how to read it. That sounds a bit stupid, but at first it was just really hard to understand how to understand this book because E. Lockhart doesn't really give a lot of description to the characters, so it was quite like full on at first and I was kind of dreading it the first, I would say 3 or so chapters, but after a while and after like understanding and remembering who the characters were sort of thing, I really enjoyed this book besides from the ending. I don't want to say I hate the ending of this book, but I hate the ending of this book. This book is so incredible and there's such a like build up towards the end, it's such a rush, and then the ending is so underwhelming that it's just like, you're just gonna end it like that? Low-key ruined the whole book for me. But yeah, besides from the ending, I actually really thoroughly enjoyed this book. The next book I read was The Mysterious Disappearance of Aiden S. as told by his brother. This is kind of a like tweenish book. It's basically about 2 brothers. One of them is called Aiden and he disappears. The police try and look for anything that he could have left behind that could help them figure out where he went, but there was literally no trace of him. So it's set as the perspective of Liam, Aiden's brother. After a few days, Aiden comes back. He was playing hide and seek with his brother, Liam, and he went into the wardrobe up in their attic. Basically, there was a world inside the wardrobe. It's the story of Aiden telling the police the truth and about how the police not telling, like believing him, and like them trying to get back to a normal life, like at school, and the media trying to like get to them. It's all very interesting and I really liked how it was in the perspective of his brother. The only thing I didn't like about this book was how it wasn't very detailed, which is fair because it is a kid's book. But I reckon if this was a young adult's mystery book, this could be something else. The next book I read was Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stefan, I'm gonna butcher that. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I had not watched the movie before actually reading the book, and I really liked that I did that. So I had like fresh eyes to the book with no idea of what was to happen. I was very shocked from what like the aunt did to him. I was like, I did also not expect there to be so much in this book. I did really enjoy this book though. I really loved the writing style. I'm not like the biggest fan of letter books sort of thing, but I really love this book. I pictured the characters in the book to be very different to what they looked like in the movie. If you have watched the movie but you haven't read the book and you thought the movie was like or you're even a big fan of the movie, I very highly recommend the book. It's fantastic. The next book I read was As Happy as Here by Jane Goodwin. I really liked this book. It's about 3 girls and they share a hospital ward, and they have this massive window overlooking like the street sort of thing, like a courtyard, and one day they see a mysterious man hide something in the street, and they get very involved, and it ends up involving someone that they know from the hospital. Yeah, it's basically about like their struggle of becoming friends. One of them is very stubborn, and the ending, that caught me off guard. I do not get emotional from books, but like towards the end when that happens, I literally was like holding my breath. I was like, it's a great book. If you're a gal and you're of the ages of like 11 to 15, you would really enjoy this book. Or even 17. I'm 17 and I really enjoyed this book. I really recommend this book. I really enjoyed it. I just got so like involved in it and I really liked it. The next book I read was House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This book is easily my favorite book ever. When they were born, they had black hair and blue eyes, and then something happens to them. They basically disappear for a few days and then they come back with stark white hair and pitch black eyes. It's basically the youngest one figuring out what happened to them and the mystery around that and why they act so weird and like why such weird things happen to them. And it is honestly incredible. It's so visual. It's one of those books where you forget you're like reading words off of a page because it feels like you're watching a movie. It's so good. If I had to recommend any book to you, my highest recommendation of books. I wanted to delve more into Crystal Sutherland's books because I just loved House of Hollow so much, and my mum found this one in Kmart and she was like, Sarah, do you want me to get it for you? And I was like, please. This book is of a guy in his senior year and this girl that transfers to his school. He slowly falls in love with her previous relationship, and like how like sort of dark it is and revealing the truth. It really delves into understanding the characters and like who they are sort of thing as people, and at the same time they're running the school newspaper, so it also talks about that, and it also talks about their best friends. And I did enjoy this book. I'm not much of a like teen high school romance book person, but I did enjoy this book. At first I was kind of like, oh gosh, it's just gonna be another like John Green book, isn't it? But I actually really enjoyed this book. Very bittersweet towards the end. If you're into like teen high school romance books, I really recommend this book. It's pretty great. I really loved the characters. I really loved Henry, the main dude character's best friends. The book I read after that was Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This book is great, but it is so depressing. It is basically about a woman in the late 90s, I'm pretty sure, mid to late 90s. She's in her early 30s and she's broke. She doesn't really have anything to go off of in life. She's a waiter. She's an aspiring writer. It's basically about her struggles in life and just dealing with her life situation, I would say. She meets these 2 guys who are very different but kind of connect in the same way in her life, I suppose, and how she falls in love with them and she has to choose between one or the other. And on top of that, she also learns that she has a lot of health issues. The first 100 pages and about halfway through is really depressing. I'm not gonna lie to you. I really enjoyed the ending of this book. It's so heartwarming and like overwhelmingly happy, and you just feel so great for her. It was quite like, oh, okay. for who she chose at the end. If you're happy to delve into sadder books, I very much recommend this book. The book that I just finished literally 2 days ago was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I'm not really into fantasy books, but this book changed my mind entirely. It's about a girl called Mare Barrow. So in Mare's world, there are people who have silver blood and there are people who have red blood. It's believed that people with silver blood are part god because they have like all these special powers. Like there are people that can move metal, there are people that can control water, there are people that can turn to stone, that sort of thing. It's about Mare and her story and how something happens to her and her rise to power, I suppose, and her trying to fit into a silver world as a red blood. But she finds out something incredible about her. It is very exciting. It's also her story dealing with the princes. But yeah, I really love this book and I'm so excited to read the second book. I posted this on my story and so many people were like, oh my gosh, I've read this book and I love it, or like, I'm about to read this book and I'm so excited, or like, oh, I'm currently reading this book and I'm so hooked. It's such a page turner of a book. But yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. It left me not really on a cliffhanger, but like on a like, oh my goodness, I need to read the second book now, but I don't have it. That's really upsetting. I have been reading throughout the year the Christy Miller series that my dear friend Liv let me borrow. The Christy Miller series follows a gal called Christy Miller. Shocker, I know. And it's basically her going through her teen years, struggling with like friends and people and relationships, and how she follows God along the way and how God is involved in her life. It's a very cutesy book, but I really am enjoying this series. I think there's 4 volumes and I'm on the 3rd one. I read the other 2 this year also. I find I read 2 books at a time. I don't know when this started. I don't know if it's ever gonna finish, but I find my brain just works best if I'm reading 2 books at a time. The other book I'm currently reading, I only started it 2 days ago, is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It is another book that's just like all over BookTok and Bookstagram. Why is that so hard to say? It's basically about this famous family called the Rivers, and the eldest daughter hosts an end of year summer party, and everyone who is anyone wants to be at this party. And basically by the next morning the house is burnt down to flames, and it's basically the story of like the whole day and of the night. And it also follows back on the story of like the siblings' parents and their story as well, which I'm really I really like how it kind of flashbacks to that, and a lot of secrets get exposed apparently, and like a lot of things happen. I'm only 48 pages in, but I'm really enjoying this. It's very like, I don't know, it's very refreshing. It's very new feeling. Does that make sense? It's definitely more of a summer read, which is quite ironic how I'm reading it in the middle of winter, but I really like it. I can definitely see me like rereading it this summer. But yeah, I really am enjoying it so far. And finally, that brings us to the end. So yeah, they are all the books I've read and I'm reading so far. If you have any book recommendations that you reckon I might like, or that you love and you just recommend anyone to read it, please comment and let me know. I can't wait to read some of your recommendations. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe and comment. It still is so weird to say that. It's still weird to consider myself as a YouTuber. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!